from the beachheads.
Everybody was still.
They were just up on some of the cliffs above the beaches, but they hadn't made much penetration by that time.
Interesting. So when you were in this prisoner of war camp and you kind of got settled into a daily routine, and you knew that your life wasn't in any imminent danger unless somebody did something out of the ordinary. How long did you have any sense for how long that this was going to go on? Did you think that you were there for months, years, weeks? What did you think?
My guess would be that we were going to be there a year.
And you were there pretty close to that.
Yeah, 9 months.
Now, how did conditions hold up during that 9 months in the way that you were? You mentioned the rations of bread were cut down. What other changes in your daily living happened?
Well, nothing significant happened until right after Christmas of 1944. Then they started, I can't remember exactly, but I don't know whether I think they gave us rations maybe every other week or something like that rather than every week. They cut back on beef and cabbage, and now we were getting a lot of frozen potatoes, and we were getting a Red Cross box each. I wish I could remember exactly the interval, but it wasn't weekly anymore. It was cut way back.
Were the potatoes frozen because the weather was changing, or because that was how they stored them?
No, because the weather was changing.
Okay. So as you got into the winter.
Yeah. There were things like kohlrabi, another root vegetable that we got, and cabbage and potatoes. And I don't know that we got any cabbage that winter. And very little did we, I don't know that there were any, can't remember whether or not we got any beef at all. Maybe some soup. Oh, I know what we got. We got dried vegetables.
All right. To make soup with?
To make soup with, yeah.
Oh, and when you got there, you estimated that there were 5,000 or so.
Something over 5,000, yeah.
What did the population grow to over that 9-month period?
Grew to about 9,900, somewhere in that. I read that in a book.
Did the accommodations grow in proportion?
Yeah, we were the third compound that had been built there, and then they built another compound beyond us. And then they, instead of having double-decker beds, they had triple-decker beds. Instead of having 8 people in a room, they had 12 people in a room.
Did you ever get the impression that the whole Allied Army was in a prisoner of war camp someplace in Europe and there was nobody left out there fighting the war?
No, we were getting, that was the nice thing about our daily newspapers. We knew that it was, well, let me step back a minute. You know, we were a week in a jail. We were we were better than half a week probably at this interrogation center. We were 3 days on rail cars. So, you know, not much time, but some time went by between the time we got shot down and the time that we got to the prison camp. And when we got to the prison camp, they were telling these glowing stories about Patton and his army with tanks going across the...
Coming up Italy?
Going across they'd broken out of the beachheads in Normandy. And they were coming across France and heading toward Germany. We wouldn't believe it, the ones of us who were newly in, until it just kept going on, and then the Germans began to pick it up in their newscasts. So no, there was hope from the day we hit the prison camp.
Let me pause it here for a minute. Okay. Pam Lawless is going to ask a question.
The radio that was hidden, was that something that you traded for with
Yes.
some of the German guards?
Yes. I don't know whether they just traded for components and put them together, or they actually got a little receiver purchased. I never did hear that part of the story.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sure they wouldn't trade you anything that you could use to harm them.
Yeah,
but
right.
that's interesting that they gave you the parts and the pieces so that you could almost have like an underground city going there.
Yeah. Of course, it kind of was a little city in this respect that each compound had its own senior officer who had an office and held meetings. You know, they give talks to the troops. After we got counted, we were all outside in the ranks, and if they had something to say to us, they made some announcements to us or that sort of thing. So they had they were responsible for our behavior.
The senior officer?
The senior officer. And it would always, if a higher ranked officer came in, he became the senior officer. And they sent out.
And they had an office?
Yeah, had a little office in one of these barracks that the Germans knew about and provided. And there was a library, and that was nice. When I first got there, it was mostly English poetry and English novels and that sort of thing. And, they're so-so. And then later, we began to get American novels and American books.
Yeah, that's interesting.
What was the purpose behind the Germans facilitating the prisoners' maintenance of military rank and order?
I think it was a way of delegating some of the control that they had to have over the individuals.
You got 5,000 to 9,000 people out there. They're going to need some help in just maintaining the semblance of order.
Yeah.
Okay. During this 9 months, it sounds like you were getting information about how the war was going. At what point did you realize that this may be coming to an end, that there may be a break here, or not a breakout, but that there was things were going to change?
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Well, when the Americans got into Holland, I guess it looked like it was going to go until they got to Rimwegen Bridge. No, that wasn't what the name. The one bridge too far.
Yes.
When that happened, our hopes kind of died for a little while until they could break out again and get going.
You spent the Battle of the Bulge period in a prison war camp, if I've got the timeline correctly.
Yeah.
Was that included in the depression and maybe feeling of how the war was going?
Yeah. We've got the first notice of the Battle of the Bulge, or that they've been encircled there in a snowstorm. We got that in the German papers. I forgot to mention that about once a week we'd get a German newspaper, and there were enough copies that everybody got to read it. And I can remember the picture of the battle zone that the Bulge was in, and as best I remember, it was a scene of some American troops, and overhead there was a German airplane. And so we thought, well, boy, this isn't good news. So that was a kind of a drop in our hopes there. Then the thing that toward the end of the war, after we realized that the Americans were covering a lot of ground, the Americans and British were covering a lot of ground in the South, and across France, and that they'd taken Paris and all that. Then we began to hear more about